Chapter 29. As the 1990s were about to end, the knowledge that established hierarchical prison gangs inevitably victimized their members would become a truism among Familianos. Most came to that conclusion by the life and death decisions that were made by NF leadership at Pelican Bay. Numerous high-ranking NF leaders were placed on the newly appointed OGB's hit list, and Robert Brown Bob Veramontes was the priority target. Like most NF-sanctioned hits, the one on Veramontes was ordered from inside Pelican Bay State Prison. The OGB demanded his immediate elimination, as well as the elimination of anyone else that might attempt to interfere. Veramontes was as good as dead. Veramontes was on the OGB's hit list for a variety of reasons. First, because of all the bullshit he had allowed to take place between Big Smiley and Pantera. And second, because he wasn't staying in contact with his assigned link to the Bay. It was no secret that Brown Bob wanted out and that he had gone around telling people he had hoped he could someday semi-retire. It was even rumored that he had approached Mothers Against Gangs, MAG, about being a speaker and that he covered up the enormous NF tattoo on his back. Brown Bob had irreversibly taken his first steps towards leaving the gang, but he knew he couldn't simply just walk away from this lifetime commitment. Blood in, blood out. He knew the rules and the consequences. Be that as it may, after spending almost 3 decades in and out of prison, Veramontes had paroled from what he thought would be his last time. He had no intentions of returning to prison, and he was attempting to settle down with his wife and children. He began to distance himself from all NF activities. He even stopped corresponding with Big Smiley, his former cellmate. While on parole, however, Veramontes got tangled up in the Santa Clara County District Attorney's war against the NF. Unfortunately, as his luck would have it, Veramontes was eventually subpoenaed to testify in front of a grand jury convened during the San Jose indictments. Although he no longer wanted anything to do with the gang, he never rolled over. As a matter of record, he was one of the few who refused to talk about his role in the mob. The answers he did give veered from other sworn testimony, and he was eventually convicted of perjury. He spent a short time in the Santa Clara County Jail, returned to CDC custody, and then sent to San. While in San Quentin, word quickly spread that Brown Bob, once one of the most respected NF leaders, had returned to prison and was now a priority target, which was a decision not every NF member agreed with. According to an article in the San Jose Mercury News, once inside San Quentin, Veramontes came across Antonio Chuco Guillen, a NF member from San Jose who was in for a drug possession charge. Chuco noticed Veramontes' back and saw a recently tattooed Aztec figure was disguising his NF emblem. Chuco felt ashamed and reported his findings to NF member Anthony Chavo Jacobs, who, through seniority, had the keys to the yard and therefore was responsible for anything that went down in the exercise area. What Chuco didn't know was that Jacobs and Veramontes were still on good terms with one another, and regardless of the OGB's decision to place Veramontes on their hit list, Jacobs wasn't about to let anything happen to someone he still considered a friend. Nevertheless, with or without Jacobs, the odds were against Veramontes, and he was sure to have a tough fight ahead of him. It was also around this time when the filter OGB orders announcing Veramontes was to be hit was sent to Grattan and other high-ranking NF leaders throughout the prison system. Veramontes was officially marked for death, and there were more than a few up-and-coming NF members who were anxious to make a name for themselves. The majority would jump at the chance to kill Veramontes, and Antonio Chuco Guillen was one of them. According to the San Jose Mercury News, while on the yard, Chuco volunteered to kill Veramontes immediately and followed protocol by going to Jacobs, San Quentin's highest-ranking NF member, first. Jacobs denied him and created a story to save Veramontes. Jacobs reasoned a yard hit was a waste of manpower, and Chuco agreed. He'd wait until they got outside. Veramontes did his time without incident and parole. Glad to be back on the streets, he was able to pick up where he had left off. He got a legal job, spent his after-work hours with his family, and the weekends working on his cars. Life was treating Veramontes well. Things seemed to be going as well as to be expected for him. But at the same time, he knew he was the newly appointed OGB's priority target, and it would only be a matter of time before an NF hit squad would send him a calling card. He also knew it would be at an unknown location, date and time which would likely arrive at a sooner than later, he thought. Intended targets are usually the last ones to know exactly when they are about to be hit. On April 19, 1999, at about 6:45 p.m., Robert Brownbaugh Veramontes was watering the rose bushes in front of his house when a Ford Explorer carrying 3 parolees parked in front of his home. The driver, Albert Beto Avila, a norteño, waited in the driver's seat while David Dreamer Escamilla, a member of the Northern Structure, and Santos Bad Boy Bernius, a longtime NF member, jumped out from the passenger doors. A fourth parolee, Antonio Chuco Guillem, who had been assigned as San Jose's underboss, watched from another parked car a few houses away. As reported in the San Jose Mercury News, Dreamer and Bad Boy walked up the driveway towards Veramontes and began shooting. Veramontes turned toward the open garage and tried to run into his home. As he crawled toward the garage door, he was hit 7 times in the chest, back, legs, and arms. 1 bullet grazed his left cheek. Dreamer got so close to his target that blood splattered onto his hands. After Veramontes was left for dead in his garage, Beto drove Dreamer and Bad Boy in the SUV to a waiting car at the La Vencia Apartments on Bud Avenue, according to the plan. Chuco, satisfied that the killing had been a success, took off in another direction. At the exchange point, Beto's responsibility was to burn the Ford Explorer of fingerprints. It was his choice to either wipe it down or set it on fire. After the murder, the 4 assassins were ready to party and checked into the Residence Inn in Sunnyvale. Never before had such a high-ranking NF leader been killed, and the killers wanted to celebrate their place in NF history. They drank beer, ate pizza, and took pictures. They invited a few of their female friends to join their party, and they acted as if nothing had ever happened. During their get-together, however, Beto admitted that he'd forgotten to wipe the SUV clean of fingerprints, which was a confession he would later regret he'd ever made. A few days later, on April 24th, Chuco and Bad Boy were arrested on suspicion of murder. They were pissed off. They felt Beto's failure to finish his part of the job had led to their arrest, and they decided to put a green light contract on him. On May 14th, approximately 1 month later, Dreamer received a phone call from Bad Boy. He told Bad Boy and Rudy Night Owl Moreno, a fellow norteño, that he had just received the go-ahead orders for a hit that was to take place in the East San Jose foothills, but he never revealed who the intended target was. Beto had his suspicions. Within a matter of hours, all 3 homeboys got into Beto's car and headed towards the San Jose foothills. Dreamer sat in the front passenger seat of the car, and Beto drove. When Beto got near Mount Pleasant Road, Dreamer instructed him to pull the car over to the side of the road and stop, because it would be safer to walk the rest of the way. According to an additional report in the San Jose Mercury News, on the way up into the foothills, Beto offered to be the gunman for the hit. He wanted to earn his stripes. As Beto walked ahead, Dreamer and Night Owl dropped behind, and Beto said, "But if I ever get taken out, I want it to be you, Dreamer." Dreamer couldn't believe his ears. It seemed that Beto was willing to take his medicine like a man. A few minutes later, a married couple that lived nearby heard what they thought were 4 to 5 gunshots. As they walked in the direction of the gunshots, they saw 2 people, Dreamer and Night Owl, take off running back down the hill towards the flatlands on the east side. When they came across Beto's body, they noticed that he had been shot in the back of his head. They immediately called the police. 2 weeks later, the San Jose police, acting on an anonymous tip, found Dreamer walking in front of a local elementary school. He was quickly approached, arrested, and taken to the Santa Rita County Jail. Rudy Night Owl Moreno, the last person involved in the double homicide investigation, was arrested a few days later. The Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office quickly convened a grand jury. After listening to numerous witnesses over the course of 3 months, the grand jury indicted Dreamer, Bad Boy, Chuco, and Night Owl. In March 2000, they all pleaded guilty and accepted deals. Dreamer and Bad Boy were sentenced to 50 years to life for acting as the trigger man, and Chuku was sentenced to 25 years to life. Rudy Night Owl Moreno, who had never been to prison, also got 25 years to life.